made my way to English in a daze. It wasn't until class ended that I realized Mike wasn't sitting in his usual seat next to me. I felt a twinge of guilt, but he and Eric both met me at the door as usual, so I figured I wasn't totally unforgiven. That's really petty of them, though. Just saying. The rest of the morning passed in a blip. It was difficult to believe that I hadn't just imagined what Edward had said. As Jessica and I entered the cafeteria, I wanted to see his face, see if he'd gone back to the cold, indifferent person I'd known for the last several weeks. The other four were there, but he was absent. I'd lost my appetite. I bought nothing but a bottle of lemonade. I just wanted to go sit down and sulk. Edward Cullen is staring at you again, Jessica said, finally breaking through my abstraction with his name. My head snapped up. I followed her gaze to see Edward, smiling crookedly, staring at me from an empty table across the cafeteria from where he usually sat. Once he'd caught my eye, he raised one hand and motioned with his index finger for me to join him. I see him across the cafeteria, like, No, don't go. Don't do that. I better go see what he wants. I could feel her staring after me as I walked away. Why don't you sit with me today? He asked, smiling. I sat down automatically, watching him with caution. He seemed to be waiting for me to say something. This is different, I finally managed. Well, he paused, and then the rest of the words followed in a rush. I decided as long as I was going to hell, I might as well do it thoroughly. I waited for him to say something that made sense. The seconds ticked by. This sounds like the most awkward lunch date. I think your friends are angry for stealing you. What brought all this on? I told you, I got tired of trying to stay away from you. I'm giving up. Giving up trying to be good. I'm just going to do what I want now and let the chips fall where they may. His smile faded as he explained, and a hard edge crept into his voice. I always say too much when I'm talking to you. It's one of the problems. Don't worry, I don't understand any of it, I said wryly, counting on that. So, in plain English, are we friends now? Friends, he mused, dubious. I looked down at my hands wrapped around the lemonade bottle, not sure what to do now. What are you thinking? He asked curiously. I looked up into his deep gold eyes, became befuddled, and, as usual, blurted out the truth. Trying to figure out what you are. His jaw tightened, but he kept his smile in place with some effort. What are your theories? I blushed. There was no way I was going to own up to that. Ma, you're not invited. Hi, Mom. Oh, yeah. Okay. I had been vacillating during the last month between Bruce Wayne and Peter Parker. There was no way I was going to own up to that. I shook my head. Too embarrassing. It's really frustrating, you know, he complained. No, I disagreed, quickly, my eyes narrowing. I can't imagine why that would be frustrating at all. Just because someone refuses to tell you what they're thinking, even if all the while they're making cryptic little remarks specifically designed to keep you up at night wondering what they could possibly mean. Now, why would that be frustrating?
She's the queen of passive
Oh my
aggression.
gosh.
No, or better, I continued, the pent-up annoyance flowing freely now. See that he also did a wide range of bizarre things, from saving your life under impossible circumstances one day to treating you like a pariah the next, and he just never explained any of that either, even after he promised. That also would be very non-frustrating. You've got a bit of a temper, don't you?
That's perfectly reasonable to be annoyed by that.
Yeah, that's very annoying behavior. Aren't you hungry? He asked, distracted. No, I didn't feel like mentioning that my stomach was already full of butterflies. I love how they even like build
Sorry,
that pause.
That's too much. That is too much.
Can you do me a favor? I asked after a second of hesitation. I just wonder if you could warn me beforehand the next time you decide to ignore me for my own good, just so I'm prepared. I looked at the lemonade bottle as I spoke, tracing the circle of the opening with my pinky finger. That sounds fair. He was pressing his lips together to keep from laughing when I looked up. Thanks. Then can I have one answer in return, he demanded. One. Okay, tell me one theory. Just one theory. I won't laugh. Yeah, you will. I was positive about that. He looked down. Oh, yes. He looked down and then glanced up at me through his long black lashes, his ochre eyes scorching. I just don't get how that works. Well, bitten by a radioactive spider? We're not even close, he teased. No spiders? Nope. And no radioactivity? Nope. Kryptonite doesn't bother me either, he chuckled. I'll figure it out eventually, I warned him. I wish you wouldn't try. He was serious again. Because what if I'm not a superhero? What if I'm the bad guy? You're dangerous, I guessed, my pulse quickening as I intuitively realized the truth of my own words. But not bad, I whispered, shaking my head. No, I don't believe that you're bad. You're wrong. His voice was almost inaudible. He looked down, stealing my bottle lid and then spinning it on its side between his fingers. The silence lasted until I noticed that the cafeteria was almost empty. We're gonna be late. I'm not going to class today, he said, twirling the lid so fast it was just a blur. See you later then. I hesitated, torn, but the first bell sent me hurrying out the door. I was lucky. Mr. Banner wasn't in the room yet when I arrived. I settled quickly into my seat, aware that both Mike and Angela were staring at me. Mike looked resentful. Angela looked surprised, slightly odd. Mr. Banner came in the room then, calling the class to order. Okay, guys, I want you all to take one piece from each box. The first should be an indicator card. Second is a 4-pronged applicator. And the third is a sterile micro-lancet. I'll be coming around with a dropper of water to prepare your cards, so please don't start until I get to you. He began at Mike's table again, carefully putting 1 drop of water in each of the 4 squares. Then I want you to carefully prick your finger with a lancet. He grabbed Mike's hand and jabbed the spike into the tip of Mike's middle finger. That's
Sorry.
So rude. Put a small drop of blood on each of the prongs, and then apply it to the card. He finished holding up the dripping red card for us to see. I closed my eyes, trying to hear through the ringing in my ears. The Red Cross is having a blood drive in Port Angeles next weekend, so I thought you should all know your blood type. Bella, are you all right? Mr. Banner asked. His voice was close to my head, and it sounded alarmed. I already know my blood type, Mr. Banner, I said in a weak voice. I was afraid to raise my head. Can someone talk to the nurse, please? He called. I didn't have to look up to know that it would be Mike who volunteered. Mike seemed eager as he put his arm around my waist and pulled my arm over his shoulder. I leaned against him heavily on the way out of the classroom. When we were around the edge of the cafeteria, out of sight of Building 4 in case Mr. Banner was watching, I stopped. Just let me sit for a minute, please, I begged. He helped me sit on the edge of the walk. I slumped over on my side, putting my cheek against the freezing damp cement of the sidewalk, closing my eyes. Wow, you're green, Bella, Mike said nervously. You can leave a message. Wow, you're green, Bella, Mike said nervously. Bella? A different voice called from the distance. What's wrong? Is she hurt? His voice was closer now, and he sounded upset. Mike seemed stressed. I think she's fainted. I don't know what happened. She didn't even stick her finger. I was taking her to the nurse, Mike explained in a defensive tone, but she wouldn't go any further. I'll take her, Edward said. I could hear the smile still in his voice. You can go back to class. Suddenly, the sidewalk disappeared from beneath me. My eyes flew open in shock. Edward had scooped me up Edward had scooped me up in his arms as easily as if I weighed 10 pounds instead of 110. Hey, Mike called, already 10 paces behind us. Edward ignored. So, you faint at the sight of blood? He asked. This seemed to entertain him. I didn't answer. I don't know how he opened the door while carrying me, but it was suddenly warm, so I knew we were inside. I opened my eyes. I was in the office, and Edward was striding past the front counter toward the nurse's door. The grandmotherly nurse looked up from a novel, astonished, as Edward swung me into the room and placed me gently on the crackly paper that covered the brown vinyl mattress on the one cot. She's just a little faint. Their blood type is allergy. The nurse nodded sagely. There's always one. Just lay down for a minute, honey. It'll pass. I know, I sighed. The nausea was already fading. I'll go get you some ice for your forehead, dear, she said to me, and then bustled out of the room. You were right, I moaned, letting my eyes close. I usually am. But about what in particular this time? Ditching is healthy. I practiced breathing evenly. You scared me for a minute there, he admitted after a pause. I thought Newton was dragging your dead body off to bury it in the woods. I still had my eyes closed, but I was feeling more normal every minute. Honestly, I've seen corpses with better color. I was concerned that I might have to avenge your murder. Poor Mike. I'll bet he's mad. He absolutely loathes me, Edward said cheerfully. You can't know that, I argued. But then I wondered suddenly if he could. I heard the door and opened my eyes to see the nurse with a cold compress in her hand. Here you go, dear. She laid it across my forehead. You're looking better, she added. I think I'm fine, I said, sitting up. Just a little ringing in my ears, no spinning. I handed the compress back to the nurse. I spun and caught the door before it closed, darting out of the infirmary. I could feel Edward right behind me. Mike came through the door then, glancing from me to Edward. The look he gave Edward confirmed what Edward had said about loathing. He looked back at me, his eyes glum. So, are you going this weekend? To the beach? While he spoke, he flashed another glare toward Edward, who was standing against the cluttered counter, motionless as a sculpture staring off into space. I tried to sound as friendly as possible. Sure, I said I was in. His eyes flickered to Edward again, wondering if he was giving out too much information. His body language made it clear that it wasn't an open invitation. I'll be there, I promised. I'll see you in gym then, he said, moving uncertainly toward the door. Gym, I groaned. I can take care of that. I hadn't noticed Edward moving to my side, but he spoke now in my ear. Go sit down and look pale, he muttered. I sat in one of the creaky folding chairs and rested my head against the wall with my eyes closed. Fainting spells always exhausted me. I heard Edward speaking softly at the counter. Miss Cope? Bella has gym next hour, and I don't think she feels well enough. Actually, I was thinking I should take her home now. Do you think you could excuse her from class? Okay, it's all taken care of. You feel better, Bella. Thanks, I said as he followed me out. It's almost worth getting sick to miss gym. Anytime. He was staring straight forward, squinting into the rain. So, are you going? This Saturday, I mean. Where are you all going exactly? He was still looking ahead, expressionless. Down to La Push, to First Beach. I studied his face, trying to read it. He glanced down at me from the corner of his eye, smiling wryly. I really don't think I was invited. Let's you and I not push poor Mike any further this week. We don't want him to snap. Mike Schmike, I muttered, preoccupied by the way he said you and I. He was towing me toward his car now, pulling me by my jacket. It was all I could do to keep from falling backward. He'd probably just drag me along anyway if I did.
He's the worst. Oh my god.
I staggered along sideways across the wet sidewalk until he reached the Volvo. Then he finally freed me. I am perfectly capable of driving myself home. I stood by the car, fuming. Get in, Bella. I didn't answer. I was mentally calculating my chances of reaching the truck before he could catch me. I'll just drag you back, he threatened, guessing my plan. I tried to maintain my...
That's not healthy.
I know, they're both crazy.
Not healthy.
This is completely unnecessary, I said stiffly. He didn't answer. He fiddled with the controls, turning the heater up and the music down. As he pulled out of the parking lot, I was preparing to give him the silent treatment, my face in full pout mode. But then I recognized the music playing, and my curiosity got the better of my intentions. Claire de Lune? I asked, surprised. Oh wait, I have to say it the way he does. He's like, you know, Debussy? Not well, I admitted. My mother plays a lot of classical music around the house. I only know my favorites. It's one of my favorites too. He stared out through the rain, lost in thought. I began to realize we were driving very fast. The car moved so steadily, so evenly though, I didn't feel the speed. Only the town flashing by gave it away.
I feel like this is an endorsement for Volvo.
I know, right?
So cute. I didn't even notice how fast you were going.
How old are you, Bella? His voice sounded frustrated for some reason I couldn't imagine. He'd stopped the car and I realized we were at Charlie's house already. I'm 17, I responded, a little confused. You don't look 17. His tone was approachable. It made me laugh. You don't seem much like a junior in high school yourself, I know. He made a face and changed the subject. Do you think that I could be scary? He raised one eyebrow and a sweet trace of a smile lightened his face. I think you could be if you wanted to. Are you frightened of me now? The smile vanished and his heavenly face was suddenly serious. No, I answered too quickly.
Okay, if you're ever in a car with somebody and they ask you if you're afraid of them, you should get out of the car.
Yeah. Warning sign.
Are you frightened of me? Should I be?
He glanced at the clock on the dashboard. My brother and sister, and Jasper and Rosalie for that matter, are going to be quite upset if they have to stand in the rain waiting for me. Oh, sorry, I guess you have to go. I didn't want to get out of the car. Have fun at the beach. Good weather for sunbathing. He glanced out at the sheeting rain. Won't I see you tomorrow? No, Emmett and I are starting the weekend early. Oh, well, have fun. I tried to sound enthusiastic. I don't think I fooled him. A smile was playing around the edges of his lips. Will you do something for me this weekend? Try not to fall into the ocean or get run over or anything, all right? He smiled crookedly. I glared at him. I'll see what I can do, I snapped as I jumped out into the rain. I slammed the door behind me with excessive force. He was still smiling as he drove away.